first Saturday, the lemonade stand was a folding card table with a hand-lettered sign that said Ruby's Lemonade 50 cents and a Tupperware pitcher with 3 lemons floating in it. The woman in the sunglasses walked past the stand twice before she stopped. She was 41. She was wearing black athletic pants, a faded gray t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled down low over a long ponytail. She did not look like she was walking somewhere. She looked like she was walking away from something. Tilly Green, who was 82 and had lived on Maplewood Court for 53 years, watched the whole thing from her front porch through the morning glory on the railing. She would tell this story for the rest of her life. She would say that she had known, by the second sip, exactly what was happening on the lawn across the street, and that she had had the good sense to keep her mouth shut and let it happen at its own speed. The woman in the sunglasses bought 1 cup of lemonade for 50 cents. She handed Ruby a dollar bill. Ruby, who was 7 and missing her front 2 teeth, said, in the small serious voice she used for cash transactions, that she didn't have change yet because she was just opening. The woman said it was fine. Ruby looked back at her father, who was sitting on the front step of the porch behind her with a cup of coffee and a folded section of the newspaper, and said, "Daddy, she gave me $1." The single dad looked up. He smiled at his daughter. He said, "Ruby, that's a tip. That means she liked the lemonade before she even tasted it. That means you have to make it especially good." The woman in the sunglasses laughed. It was a quiet, almost startled laugh, like the sound a woman makes when she has not laughed in 3 months and was not planning to start this morning. His name was David Quinn. He was 42. He was a 10th grade physics teacher at the regional high school. He was a widower. His wife Anne had died of a stroke at 36, 8 days before Ruby's 3rd birthday. He had been raising her alone for 4.5 years on a school district salary and a small life insurance pension. He drank his coffee black. He kept his front yard mowed. He did not, on most Saturday mornings, have anything to do until he walked Ruby to her swim lesson at 11. The woman in the sunglasses tasted the lemonade. She said, "That's actually quite good." Ruby said, "I made it myself." David said, "She squeezed the lemons, I did the sugar." The woman in the sunglasses said, "Well, tell your dad he gets a tip too." She put another dollar on the corner of the card table. She walked away. Tilly Green, watching from her porch, set her teacup down very carefully on the saucer and made a small humming sound to herself. The narration steps closer now. It rides Tilly. Tilly Green had been married for 51 years before her husband Wendell had died of a quiet heart attack in their kitchen 6 summers earlier. She had watched David Quinn move into the Mitchell house with his wife and his little girl 7 years ago. She had brought a casserole over the day after Anne died, and she had brought another one a week later, and another one the week after that, and a small package of homemade molasses cookies every Wednesday for the next 2 years, because she had decided privately that a man raising a little girl alone did not need her sympathy, but did need a steady supply of decent food on Wednesdays. She knew everything that happened on Maplewood Court. She had not seen David Quinn smile at a stranger in 4.5 years. She had seen him smile at one this morning. She made a note of it in her own way and went inside to write a letter to her sister Marion in Connecticut. The letter said only, "I think the boy across the street is going to be all right." A woman stopped at the lemonade stand and stayed for 2 cups. She mailed it Monday morning. The woman in the sunglasses came back the next Saturday. She bought 1 cup of lemonade. She gave Ruby another tip. She told Ruby that the proportion was even better than the week before. She asked David, polite, what kind of lemons he was using. He said the cheap kind from the corner grocery, 2 pounds for $3. She said, polite, that they tasted more expensive than that. He said the secret was that Ruby refused to use sugar from a bag. She only used the cubes from her grandmother's tea tin. She said that explained it. She did not say her name. He did not ask. She walked away. The narration sees what neither of them sees. The woman in the sunglasses got back into a plain gray sedan parked at the end of the cul-de-sac that morning. She drove 15 minutes south to a glass-walled office building near the airport, where she was the chief executive officer of a regional commercial real estate firm called Haverson Capital. Her name was Marin Haverson. She had taken over the firm from her father when he had passed 11 years earlier. She was responsible on paper for 47 shopping centers, 22 office parks, and a row of converted warehouse residential blocks downtown. She had been divorced for 9 months. She had no children. She had begun, 3 months earlier, parking her car at the end of various cul-de-sacs in the city's older neighborhoods on Saturday mornings and walking, in a baseball cap and her oldest gray t-shirt, for 2 hours, because the glass-walled office had begun to feel like a place she could not breathe. She had told no one she was doing this. She had stopped that first Saturday because Ruby's hand-lettered sign had said Ruby's Lemonade, and Maren Haverson had been named Ruby by her grandmother until she was 4 years old, when her father had quietly changed her name on the birth certificate because Maren sounded more like a young executive. She had not told that to David Quinn. She did not plan to. She came back the third Saturday. The third Saturday it rained. Ruby's lemonade stand had a small umbrella over it that her father had clamped to the card table with a vice grip. Maren was wearing a hooded jacket and the same baseball cap. She bought 2 cups, one for herself, and she told Ruby one for the friend who was waiting for her around the corner. Ruby asked who the friend was. Maren said, very serious, he's imaginary, but he likes lemonade. Ruby laughed, the clean, fast laugh of a 7-year-old. David on the porch step laughed too. Tilly Green, across the street, watching through the morning glory in the rain, said quietly to herself, there it is. The narration seized the rhythm of the next month land. The 4th Saturday, Maren bought 3 cups. She told Ruby the imaginary friend had brought a friend. Ruby spilled one of them on her own shoe and refused to charge for the spill. Maren paid for it anyway. She walked over to the porch step where David sat with his coffee. She did not sit down. She stood at the bottom of the porch step for 40 seconds and asked him what kind of physics he taught. He said 10th grade, the year they teach motion and forces. He said it was the best year of physics there was. She said, quiet, that she had hated 10th grade physics. He said, smiling, that she had probably had a bad teacher. She said, smiling back, that she had probably had a teacher who was not him. She walked away. David Quinn sat on the porch step for 10 minutes after she left and did not drink his coffee. The narration steps to Tilly Green again. Tilly was watering her tomatoes when David came across the street that afternoon. He had a paper plate of brownies in his hands that Ruby had baked. He set it on the railing. He said, polite, Mrs. Green, I want to ask you something. She said, ask. He said, there is a woman who has come to Ruby's stand 4 Saturdays in a row. I don't know her name. I don't know where she lives. I don't know what she does. I would like to know if you have ever seen her. Tilly Green looked at him. She looked at the brownies. She said gently, David, son, I have lived on this street for 53 years. I have seen a woman like that exactly once before in my life. She was Wendell's mother the first time he brought me to meet her. The point is not where I have seen her before. The point is that she keeps coming back. David Quinn nodded slowly. He said, thank you. She said, eat the brownies first, then go. He went back across the street. The 5th Saturday came. Maren parked her car at the end of the cul-de-sac. She walked the 4 blocks. She bought 1 cup of lemonade. She talked to Ruby about the 2nd grade reading list. She walked over to the porch. David was on the step with his coffee. He said, good morning, I'm David Quinn. She paused. She took off her sunglasses. She had brown eyes with small lines at the corners. She said, I'm Maren. He said, I'm glad to meet you, Maren. That was all. The narration sees the rest of the morning fold itself into the space between 2 people who have had 4 Saturdays of careful kindness. Maren sat on the porch step. Ruby brought out a 2nd pitcher of lemonade and 3 more cups. David asked Maren what she did during the week. Maren told him simply that she worked in commercial real estate. He nodded. He did not ask the size of the firm. He asked her if she liked it. She said after a long pause that there were parts of it she was good at and parts of it she was getting tired of. He said that was fair. He said that was the answer of an honest person. They sat on the porch for an hour. The narration steps to the week between, because the week between is the part that matters. Maren Haverson went into the Haverson Capitol Tower on Monday morning and sat in her glass-walled office for 9 hours straight. She closed 2 leases. She signed a memo about a shopping center in the East End. Her assistant Karen, polite in a charcoal blazer, noticed at 4 in the afternoon that her boss had not eaten lunch and had not snapped at anyone, and Karen quietly ordered her a bowl of soup from the lobby cafe and left it on the desk and went home. David Quinn taught 5 sections of 10th grade physics that week. On Wednesday, his 5th period class learned the equations of uniform acceleration. He gave them a worksheet about a girl on a skateboard going down a hill. The girl in the worksheet was named Ruby. He had been writing that same name into a math problem since the year he had become a single father. He made his daughter pancakes for dinner that night, and Ruby asked him, calm as a small judge, whether the nice lady was coming back on Saturday. He said he believed she was. Ruby said, "Okay, Daddy," and went back to her pancake. Tilly Green saw David's kitchen light on at 10:30 Wednesday night. She had a feeling about it. She let the feeling be. The narration sees the 6th Saturday land. The 6th Saturday, a black SUV came down Maplewood Court at 10 in the morning. It pulled up at the curb in front of Ruby's lemonade stand. A polite young woman in a charcoal blazer stepped out, looked at the porch step where Maren and David were sitting with their coffee and said, "Ms. Haverson, the mayor's office moved the meeting up. I'm so sorry, he's on the line at 10:30. I tried to call." Maren said, "Quiet, I left my phone in the car." David Quinn looked at Maren. He did not look at the SUV. He did not look at the polite young woman in the charcoal blazer. He looked at Maren with an open, patient face that did not change. Maren said, "I'll be a few more minutes." The young woman nodded. She got back into the SUV. The SUV waited at the curb. Maren turned to David. She said, "I'm a chief executive officer of a real estate company called Haverson Capital. We own 47 shopping centers and a number of office parks in this city. I have been wearing the cap for 3 months because I needed to walk somewhere where no one would say my name. I am sorry I did not tell you the first Saturday. I would like to tell you now." David said level, "Thank you for telling me." She said, "Are you angry?" He said, "No." She said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you came back 5 times. People who are pretending only come back once." She did not say anything for a long moment. She said, "May I come back next Saturday too?" He said, "I would like that very much." The narration steps to Tilly Green one last time. Tilly was watering the tomatoes the next Saturday when the gray sedan pulled into the driveway across the street. Maren got out in jeans and a clean white blouse. She had Ruby's grandmother's tea tin under one arm, which Ruby had handed off to her the Saturday before with strict instructions on the proper sugar cubes. She had a bouquet of sunflowers in her other hand. Ruby came running down the porch steps and hugged her around the waist. David stood at the porch with his coffee. He waved at Tilly across the street. Tilly waved back. She watched them go into the house together. She watched David close the door behind them with the patient, steady ease of a man who had not opened the door for a guest in 4.5 years. She made herself a fresh cup of tea. She wrote a second letter to Marion that read only in her schoolteacher hand, "Her name is Maren." She brought sunflowers. The Saturdays kept coming. The narration does not try to count them. Ruby gave up the lemonade stand in September because the air turned cold, and the porch step conversation moved indoors to the kitchen table. Maren learned how to fold a paper napkin the way Ruby liked it for the breast pocket of her father's shirt. She learned how to grade a 10th grader's physics homework with the patient red pen David used. She learned how to bake a tray of molasses cookies the way Tilly Green baked them, because Tilly had walked across the street one Wednesday afternoon in October with the recipe written out by hand on the back of an envelope, and had said, "Kind, you're going to need this one, sweetheart." Maren had taken the envelope. She had not let go of Tilly's hand for a full minute. She had said, in a small voice she had not used since she was 4, that her grandmother had been called Ruby. Tilly Green had nodded once and said, "I had a feeling about that too." A year later, the witness narration steps forward and lets the year fold neatly. There would be a small backyard wedding under the maple in David Quinn's yard. Tilly Green would attend. Ruby would walk her father down the aisle in a pale yellow dress. Maren Haverson would wear her mother's plain ivory dress, no veil, modest, dignified. The Haverson Capital staff would close the office for the day and send a single white box of pastries from Bethany Sloan's bakery as their gift. Maren would, 3 months later, step down from the chief executive office and take a quieter board seat. She would tell the firm's investors in a short letter that she had spent 11 years running her father's company and was ready to spend the next 11 years on a porch step in a cul-de-sac where a little girl sold lemonade for 50 cents a cup and a 10th grade physics teacher made the coffee. She would say that the company had been built on patience and that her patience would be better spent at home now. Tilly Green, watching from her porch the morning of the wedding, would say to no one in particular that she had known, by the second sip on the first Saturday, exactly what was happening on the lawn across the street. She would say that some women in baseball caps were walking towards something they did not know they were looking for. She would say that some single dads, sitting on a porch step with a cup of coffee, were waiting more patiently than they knew. She would say that this is the way a family is made on a quiet street, one Saturday at a time, when nobody is watching except the woman with the tomatoes across the way. She would say that she had been very glad to watch.